Hi friends, this is Terry Squires with today's Nashville, This is Faith. I sat down with Nancy Jones, wife of the late country music legend George Jones. She shares her compelling story and her life with her husband. You won't want to miss her episode. You are never alone in your struggles. Jesus is by your side. How do you survive physical and emotional abuse? Nancy Jones, wife of 30 years to the legendary country music artist George Jones, shares her side of the story in her book, Playing Possums, that his fans and others might find surprising or even quite shocking. And she has a message that saved her, George, and others facing the same battle. This is her story. This is today's Nashville. This is Faith. Beautiful Nancy Jones, Ken Abraham, thank you so much for inviting me into your beautiful home. It is absolutely gorgeous, and what an honor it is to talk about your book. Ken, you helped write it.
I did. We had a great time.
We did.
It is an unbelievable book. I read it. I couldn't put it down. Playing Possum, I was surprised, like so many other people, a little bit shocked sometimes. We're going to talk about it. But the first chapter just took me back, and it was, you almost died. Tell me what happened.
I got COVID, and so then you couldn't go into the hospitals or nothing like that. So we went to this doctor's office, but he said, stay in the car and I'll bring your medicine down there. So they hooked me up to IVs and all of this in the car. Well, I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden I knew I was dying because I had started throwing up and everything that you do when you know you're dying. And I kept telling Kirk, I said, Kirk, I am dying.
And he's your assistant, right? Or agent, isn't he?
Yeah, and I said, I'm dying. I said, I really am. He said, no, it's just the medicine they're giving you. Well, he looked back there and he said, oh my God. So he grabbed me and took me up to the doctor's office where you're not supposed to go in because of COVID. And they said, there's nothing we can do. She don't have a pulse. And I don't remember none of that. I know they said I messed up the elevators and everything because I was dying.
Right.
You know, I always said that I think they cleanse your body when you're fixing to go to heaven. So you're gonna make me cry here. So they said, she doesn't have a pulse, there's nothing we can do. And Kirk was screaming and hollering, calling the ambulance. Well, by the time the ambulance got there, it's been 10 minutes later. I'm still dead.
No pulse for more than 10
Nothing.
Did they do CPR or did they?
No,
did
so
they just,
the ambulance came, the
They thought
guy
she was dead?
came, yeah, he came up and said, she has no pulse, there's nothing we can do. So Kirk is screaming at them, oh yes you can, you got to. So when they were putting me on the gurney to bring me back to the elevator, then I started screaming, I don't want to go to the hospital, I don't want to go, because my friends were dying in the hospital. And so God brought me back.
But while you were out, you had an experience that changed your life.
Oh my gosh.
Tell Terry about that.
Absolutely beautiful. I never seen such, there's no way to describe white. There's no way. I mean, I was just up there in this white, just floating. I mean, I'm like, this is wonderful. It wasn't a cloud. They're not bright enough. They were not white enough. I've never seen anything like it. But I never did get to see God. But I was up there floating in whatever this white was, and it was just absolutely beautiful. And every day I would look for that white, and I have never found that white yet.
Well, your purpose isn't finished, right?
No,
That's
God
right.
brought me back.
Your book, the very first question I want to ask is, why tell your story now?
I think that's why I brought back. When I was
Were you writing it at the time or no?
No.
No. When I was in the hospital, it's like God was talking to me. Like, there's a lot of books out on George Jones and a lot of books out on you. I think it's time that you bring the truth out. So I told God, when I get out of here, I'm going to write a book. And I called Ken, and I told him, and he said, yeah, that was probably God talking to you. So that's why that I wrote the book, because I wanted people to know my story, how God brought me back, and the spiritual inside of me, and that is still there today, and never will it change. But I wanted people to know there is a good Lord out there, and that anything that you want, He can help you with it if you just believe.
And He saved you, and He saved so many other people, and you saved George.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Somebody
true.
had to. Too many demons in that man.
Yeah.
But we got him out.
Most people give Nancy the credit for saving George's life, and she did, just as she's saying. But more than that, she brought him to a place where he would trust in the Lord. So it was more than just saving his physical body; it was also saving his eternal soul.
It's a beautiful story, but it was a long process. Let's go back. When did you meet George?
Oh, gosh. That was in 81, November of 81.
And I remember reading that you were like, no, I'm not very interested. No.
I didn't even know who he was.
She was not a country music fan or anything.
No, I was a Creedence Clearwater girl all the way. But after I met him, he was such a gentleman, so nice, so sweet, and just something that but I felt like God wanted me to help him. He told me so much stuff that he said he never told anybody ever in his whole life. So we sat up talking all night long. And the things that he told me, I was like, wow, you've been through a lot and you're going through a lot. And so I just felt like that was what my mission was, to get him saved and get him to heaven. And that's what I worked on.
Were you in Alabama at this time, or where were you living? Were you in here in Nashville?
No, I'm from Shreveport, Louisiana.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we didn't move to Nashville until 91.
91. So how long after you met him did you get married then?
Well, 2 years. We were married 32 years, together 34 years.
Okay.
But the 2 years that before we got married is whenever I guess I was learning there was more than just liquor going on. There was a whole lot that needed to be gone.
A lot.
And so, yes, so that was my goal, was to get rid of all of that and get this man closer to Jesus.
After you married, 32 years, when did everything start to fall apart, in the sense that you got married, and in the book it talks about his drinking? Did you know he was a big drinker when you married him? And
before we got married, he was more like a closet drinker, but I have a nose, I can smell it.
Yeah.
So I knew that there was drinking going on. And then I knew there was cocaine. So something I never ever in my life even knew what it was. And I didn't know what marijuana was. I didn't know what cocaine was. And so it's in the book, the first time I ever said, "What is that?"
what did he say?
He knocked the fire out of me because he thought, I was making fun of him. I wasn't.
Was that the first time
I did not know
that
what it was.
Was that the first time he ever put his hand on?
Yes.
What was going through your mind at that point?
Like, wow. I mean, I really needed Jesus then. But I thought, I can't do this. So instead of walking away, it's like I had this voice telling me, you're not going nowhere. You're going to help this man.
And how far along in your marriage was the first time he put his hand on you?
Oh, gosh. After that was before we got married that happened. And then in 83, he kind of calmed down a little. You had to keep him busy and keep projects. So that's how we ended up building Jones Country.
Okay.
because it kept him busy for a long time.
We're going to talk about that more and everything that's happened in the book when we come back.
Okay.
Nancy, what was it like to live with the country music legend, George Jones?
George never considered himself a legend. George was, I think a lot of the drinking and stuff was because he was very shy, never thought he would sing that good. So those were the things that I had to convince him, you know, you don't have to have a drink to go on the stage. And my gosh, can't you listen to your voice? It's absolutely beautiful. Look, God gave you this beautiful voice. He never, ever had any lessons on how to learn how to sing. It was just a gift God gave him. So that's the thing that I had to teach him.
What do you think it was anxiety for him, or?
I don't think he got anxiety. I think he just didn't have enough confidence in himself.
Inferiority
Yeah.
complex, that sort of thing. Even from the time he was a little boy, his dad used to wake him up in the middle of the night to come down and do music and that sort of thing. And George just never felt that he was good enough to do all that.
Never, ever.
So they literally would come up to a concert sometime, come to the venue, and George wouldn't go in. He wouldn't go in, and you know, he got the reputation
he did.
of no-show Jones.
Yeah.
When Nancy and George first got together, was it like 200 different concert promoters were suing him because he hadn't shown up.
Right.
How did you handle all that?
I called every one of them. And I said, I felt so sorry for the postman. He couldn't get all that stuff in that mailbox. But I called each and every one of them and said that if you would give him another chance, because they'd say, well, we've heard about you, and everybody says you're good for him and all this. I said, well, I'm good for my word. If you will book him like everybody wanted a Saturday. I said, okay, that's fine. So I would book I'd have a Thursday and a Friday, give them a Saturday because I knew it was going to be free. And then Sunday we worked somewhere, so you had enough money there to pay for going out with the 2 buses and the band and the sound and the lights. So that's how I figured it. And so he never missed not one of those shows that I did for him to go back out.
So you kind of like took control of everything.
She did, yeah.
I did.
She was,
Yes.
yeah, she was the banker too.
Oh, yeah. You know, I get so tickled everybody say, man, she married him for his money. What money?
He didn't have anybody.
What money?
Yeah.
He wasn't working, and he was a no-show. I had more lawyers that I had to pay than I did anything. So I used to sit there at the table and figure out, okay, how am I going to pay the electricity, the water, and the telephone this month? So then he would come in and he'd say, call that guy in Lancaster, Texas, and see if he will take me on a Saturday night. I'd always call him. He'd say, you know I will, Nancy, come on. So that's how we were paying bills there for a while, until finally, you know, we got on our feet. But when I cringe when I hear someone say, they had so much money, and then that's the only reason she was there. I had more money than he did, trust me.
He made money, but he squandered it.
Yeah.
I read that you were in the restroom. You had started the museum or in the restaurant in
Nashville.
In Nashville, and some of the girls were in the restroom,
no,
and you were
that's
you were
a
in
good
there
story.
cleaning the restrooms. And
She was cleaning the toilets.
Yeah, overheard the.
Nancy Jones was in there cleaning
What
the toilets.
went through your mind when? Tell the story
Well,
here.
They said, I can't believe that they got this beautiful place. So Nancy Jones isn't doing anything but using George and taking his money. That should be a place for him and Tammy. I'm like, oh my God, if you only knew, girl, if you only knew. So I listened, and then all of a sudden, I got mad. Imagine that. But I got mad, and I was like, you know what? When y'all come out of those stalls, I'm going to whip every one of y'all. Every one of y'all. I am George Jones's wife, and I am cleaning up these commodes after you people in here drunk, throwing up and everything, and you think this should be Tammy Wynette's place? So one girl, 2 of the girls just took off. They didn't even stop. They ran. The third one, she came out, and honey, she was big. She was a big girl. And I'm like, oh God, what have I done? She can whip me right here. She can kill me in this bathroom. And I said, I'm not afraid of you. I can tell you right now, I'm not afraid of you. I said, this is my place. I've worked my butt off for this place. And so has George Jones to give me the money to do this and work as hard as I'm doing. I said, we both worked to get this money to build this place. And then that's when Kirk was there, you know, he helped me build the place, because even when I got that place, I didn't have the money to run it. So Kirk was just wonderful running that place. But the girl came out and she didn't apologize or nothing. She took off running. And so Kirk was standing there saying, what took you so long? I said, because I was going to whip them. I was going to whip all three of them. He was like, oh, you lost your mind. But I couldn't have whipped none of them. I was skinny.
Yeah. Don't mess with Nancy.
No, I was at that time, but I'm not anymore. I just love people.
There's a great story at when they had Jones Jones Country. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
the concert arena, where when I first actually met Nancy, I was working with Randy Travis, and they said, well, if you want a good Randy Travis story, go talk to Nancy. So I came and talked to Nancy, and that's back before Nancy was so much in love with Jesus. So she knew a few cuss words back in those days. And but one of the best stories was over at Jones Country, where Randy Travis was supposed to sing on Sunday. Well, they'd come in, and Nancy had his name on the venue, on the billboards outside a couple of days early. And Randy's wife at that time was not happy about that. And she comes complaining to Nancy about that. And Nancy just took a little swipe at her. And I don't know if you knew or not, but she was wearing a wig. But after Nancy had an encounter with her, she wasn't wearing that wig anymore.
Well, I was tired. I mean, we had a campground, we had a bar, we had a restaurant, we had a grocery store, plus I had all of those people across there for a concert. And she was like, why is Randy's name up there? I said, it's Randy, George Strait, it was Conway Twitty, it was all these people. She said, well, Randy's going to get paid extra. I said, oh, no, he's not. So we got into it, and she was going down the stairs, and I just grabbed her wig off. And she ran out there. She said, I'm going to tell Randy. I said, fine, bring him in here. By that time, somebody had told George, and here comes George, which he was drunk. Here comes George. He comes in, and he says, what's going on here? Randy said, not a thing, George. I'm fixing to go on the stage.
George loved Randy, and Randy loved George. Yeah,
he loved Randy Travis.
George loved Randy, I think, because Randy was doing that traditional country music, remember? And for a long time, country music was going a different direction until Randy Travis came out with his first album, and things began to happen. And George just loved listening to Randy, and Randy just admired George so much. So they were good friends.
They were very good friends.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to talk more about George's life, your life with him. We're going to talk Jesus when we come back. Nancy, you endured a lot of emotional and physical abuse, mostly when George was drinking and under the influence of drugs. Where was your faith in all of this?
With Jesus. I would have never made it without Jesus, I can tell you that. He kept me going. And I knew that I had to keep going in order to get this man to heaven, because when he wasn't drinking and doing all this stuff, you couldn't have asked for anybody any sweeter and nicer. It was the perfect husband. But once he got that 2 drinks in him, he changed. I mean, you would have thought, how can anybody change from 2 drinks and then just get bad and worse and bad? And then it just got so bad. So yes, without Jesus and me praying as hard as I prayed during all that time, I would have never made it.
Years, decades.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did you ever notice, like, when he took those 2 drinks, I'm out of here, or?
I couldn't leave.
No, I mean not leave, but just like distance yourself from him.
No, I had to get ready to be able to. With George, you could calm him down talking about his mother. Mm-hmm. You can calm him down talking about Jesus.
Yeah.
So I knew that Jesus was in there. I just had to bring him out. Mm-hmm. So yes, and then he was just a totally different person. And there were so many demons in there. And in the book, it's got about how everybody in Nashville knows it, how he would go around and talk like an old man, talk like Donald Duck. And he was good at it too. And so I had to get rid of those two people.
You have conversations between the two. He's doing all the talking, but one sounded like Donald Duck. Who was the old movie star? I can't remember his name.
Walter Brennan.
Walter Brennan. He would sound like Walter Brennan. And then the third party was George Jones. And they're all fighting with each other. And Nancy's in the middle of all that, trying to make sense of it all and keep George alive, driving down the road.
Down the road. And he had an accident.
No, I have to tell you about how I got rid of them.
Oh,
Okay,
first,
So we were driving to Alabama, and he kept on talking and arguing with those people. So I finally said, just stop the car. He said, what? I said, I'm going to get rid of them. He said, how are you going to do it? I said, I'll show you. So I opened the door. I pulled out the old man. I pulled out the duck. Guess what? The duck went back in. I said, oh, wait a minute. I had to get the duck. I had to get the duck. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. Yeah. But that's how far gone he was. And I did get rid of him. Yes, and so I slammed the door and said, let's go. And he said, oh, thank you so much for getting rid of them. They were killing me.
And he never talked about it again?
No, never, ever.
But he did continue drinking, and that's the accident you were referring to, where everybody thought George had quit drinking. Well, Nancy knew that he hadn't. And
he thought if he had little vodka bottles, those little bitty ones, that you couldn't smell it. Well, I knew he was drinking. I could smell vodka. So he would hide them in his boot, in his suit, anywhere he could hide them. So here I'd be in the closet, digging them out, knowing I'm going to get in trouble if he finds it out. So he'd go to his little hide place, and he's like, you been in my closet? No. Well, I got rid of all of them. But then there was a guy that lived out there that we were letting live free. He would have them stashed at his place on our property. So George would go up there and get them. So it was, you'd had, how I tried to get him off of stuff, people were still giving him stuff.
That's probably what happened.
You kicked him out, didn't you?
No, I didn't. I kicked that guy out. Yeah, that's right. Yes, I did. Yeah. And you know what? So did George. When we left the hospital, he said, I want that guy gone.
Tell him about the accident, though, because that's what put him in the hospital.
He had the song Choices, so he was calling my daughter because he wanted her to hear the song Choices. And in Alexa's, if you got a CD in there and you're calling somebody, it cuts it off. So he was mad because it kept cutting off. So he was beating the dash and screaming and hollering, and the next thing you know, there was nothing you could hear because he was in the hit the bridge.
He smashed into the side of the bridge. The whole front end of his Lexus SUV was caved in over his body.
And he slid under.
And Nancy heard the sirens from their home.
Did you know? Did something inside of you say?
I knew it was, when I heard him on the front porch, I knew that he had hit something. So I took off running from my house all the way to where that bridge was. And I could never do that again.
It was over a mile away. Over a mile away.
I ran. Yeah. And when I got there, they had already pumped him up to let his liver float and his lungs. And I'm thinking, oh my God, he's all so swollen. And they were like, no, we did that. We have to, because we don't want his liver and his lungs to explode for whatever they were doing. But he didn't believe in seatbelts.
Yeah.
So he went under the dash. So they had to use the life jaws to get him out.
Yeah, tell Terry about whenever he came back home, though, and who helped you whenever he came home. He loved gospel music. George loved gospel music.
Vestal Goodman. Oh, my God, she was so sweet. I would be so tired, and I'd be laying on the couch in the living room. Here she come. Don't get up, baby. I'm not here for you today. Where's George? I said, in his room. Off she goes. I could hear her back there praying, hallelujah, everything. And then she'd come back out, and she said, hold on a minute. I said, okay. She opened that door, and she said, get in here, devil. You get out of these people's house, and don't you ever come back in here again. So she'd stomp them.
She would. She'd take authority.
That's where I got it from. I mean, right now, if I feel like the devil's in, I've got the door open, and I done kicked him out.
Your faith really grew during this time, too, didn't it?
Yeah.
It really did, yeah. And George's did too. And the last few days of his life, he was not in good shape, and he was in the hospital, and he was in almost a comatose condition. And Nancy, you were there with him, and the doctor came in. And you want to tell Terry?
The doctor came in and he said, "I'm gonna go take a shower," but I said, "Don't leave me." He said, "I'll be right back. I'll be back. I'm gonna go take a shower and come back." Well, when he came back, I'm at the foot of the bed rubbing his feet and everything, and he's not talking at all. Hadn't talked for a while. And all of a sudden, that deep voice that everybody would know it was George Jones, he said, "Well, hello there." He said, "I've been looking for you. My name's George Jones." And the doctor said he's talking to God. And then he was gone. So that would have been George's mannerism. He would have definitely introduced himself to God like God didn't know who he was.
Oh, Nancy, precious. And God used you to get him there.
Yep.
Yes,
he did. He started me very young. If you read the book, I was abused when I was young. And I used to never understand why. I mean, it's your mom. Why? But then, now I look back and know why. He was getting me strong then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have just a minute left. Nancy, somebody is listening to you right now, and they need that message. What would you say to them?
Believe in Jesus, because he's there and he ain't going nowhere. And if you believe in the good Lord, and I don't know how to pray like Ken and them do, but I know how to talk to Jesus.
That's right.
Just like me and you talking, I can talk to Jesus like this all day long.
And he hears us.
He does listen.
He knows our heart. He's with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, and Ken, thank you.
Glad to. You both make me cry, I tell you what.
Just bless you. You're going to reach so many people with your story.
I hope so.
You will. I know. My friend, do you have somebody in your life that you have just kept praying for and praying for? Don't stop. Jesus hears you. He knows that person. Let him put it at his feet. This is today's Nashville. This is faith.
Cornerstone Television wishes to thank all our faithful viewers whose consistent prayers and financial support have made this program possible.